Hey there friends, it's Liz from the Peacock Homestead, and we are in cold upstate New York. So we're joining Jessica over at the Three Rivers Homestead. She's doing the pantry challenge, which she's been doing for quite a few years now. This would be my 4th year participating, and pretty much it's a no spend, or you're challenging yourself not to spend so much every week on groceries. So I'll be trying to use up a lot of the stuff in my freezers and then the stuff that I had canned last year. And we'll be making meals from scratch. And of course I'll be making cheese. That is one of my favorite things to do. I'm actually really loving it. I've been doing it since last year. So far I've made around like 16 or 17 different cheeses. So I'm super excited to share that with you guys as well. This week I made some squeaky cheese curds and they turned out really tasty, and then we decided to make 2 different meals with them. We made a poutine, which is any kind of potatoes, and then you have the squeaky cheese curds on that, and then gravy on top. Then we had some protein on the side, and that's one of the things I'll actually be going back to making again. The poutine turned out so amazing. I can't wait to show you guys. But let's get into the cheese making. So my hubs recently got me this book for Christmas. It's called Cheese Making from Scratch, and I love this book. It has so many recipes. It's definitely a beginner's book on cheese making. My other favorite book is a 200 cheese recipes. Those actually have a ton of recipes, and it does have directions as well. But this is a really neat book, and I love this recipe. I just had to try it right away. So for this recipe, you're going to need 2 gallons of milk, a mesophilic culture, and you're going to need calcium chloride and rennet. If I was using raw milk, I wouldn't even need calcium chloride. So what it does is it restores essential calcium ions lost during the pasteurization, providing it necessary glue for proteins to form a strong, firm curd. So I got my milk warming up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 32 degrees Celsius. And then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of calcium chloride to the milk. I know it says to add it in a 1/4 cup of water, but this time I just decided that I didn't have time for that. I'm just going to add it and give it a good stir. And then the next thing that you'll need is a mesophilic culture. You can get those off of Amazon, and I like to get them on the cheese making company as well. I order a lot of my cultures through them. It's actually a trusted company, so I got my press from there on all my molds and my cheese wax and whatnot. So right here I have 1/4 teaspoon of the mesophilic culture, and I'm just going to let that sit for a good 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to give it a stir. And you stir it for about, I would say, 1 minute to at least 30 seconds. And then you're going to add your rennet next. So right here I have animal rennet. That's the best rennet that I could find that works really good. I have a half a teaspoon of that. And again, I'm just adding that to the milk. And I'm going to stir that for at least 30 seconds up and down, and then just side to side motion. And then I was going to let that sit for about a good 45 to 50 minutes. We'll come and check on it and see if we have a clean break. So I let it set for a good hour, and I'm just gonna pop in my spatula and see if we have a clean break. It's gonna look like you're cutting through a hard Greek yogurt. You want it to split in half and make sure the curd is separating from the whey. It looks like I'm getting a clean break, and it's ready to be cut. It's good to go. And then we're just going to cut it vertically and horizontally. And then after, we're just going to let that sit for 5 minutes. And you see how the curds are breaking away from the whey? I'm just going to take a spoon, a slotted spoon, and give that another little cut underneath. And then I'm going to let that set for 5 more minutes. Since I like to be a rebel, I do deter a little bit, but I try to follow the directions with the first time recipe. Since it's the first time making it, I was a little nervous, but I do get nervous on making a recipe for the first time, especially with all of the time it takes to make a cheese. So I turned the burner on and I'm just going to heat this up slowly within 20 to 30 minutes. And I'm going to heat it up to around 105 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 41 degrees Celsius. And you'll notice when you're stirring that the curds will get smaller and smaller, and you'll be able to tell the difference between a cooked curd and a not so cooked curd. It'll be all squishy and it'll just kind of disintegrate in your finger. And a cooked curd, a perfectly cooked curd, will bounce off the counter. It squeaks in your teeth, and when you squish a whole mound together, it'll knit together perfectly, just like that. And then you can crumble it out. And that means your cheese is ready for the next step, which is straining out the whey until you get to about the curd line. And then you're going to let it rest. The curds will go down and kind of make a big mound in the bottom of the pan. And then you'll strain out the rest of the whey. So I'm just going to use a regular colander and some cheesecloth. And then I saved a little whey for that pot underneath there. I have it in a metal bowl. So it's kind of like a double boiler. I have some whey heating up with a metal bowl, and then I have it in a strainer, and then I'm covering that up, and that will help it mend together. So I'm going to flip it every 10 minutes for 40 minutes. It'll end up being one big mound of cheese, and then we can cut it and flavor it if we want to, and store in the fridge for up to a week to 2 weeks. So I'll just dice this up into cubes, and then this needs some salt. So I'm going to put about 2 teaspoons. And you'll be surprised, the salt will literally disappear by the next morning. And then you can just add salt to taste. You could also add different flavors, like some culinary herbs like thyme or sage. And you can use whatever you have in your kitchen to spice things up, and with a little bit of oil, and that would be super delicious as well. I'm definitely thinking for the next time I was going to add maybe some chili flakes and oil. That will be really delicious. And I think for the next time what I want to do is keep them in long kind of strips, so they'll actually look like a cheese stick or the cheese curds, so you can cut them whatever shape you want. So I thought that was pretty fun, and I just decided to make it in cubes, just exactly what she said. And then I'm adding about 2 teaspoons of salt, and it will literally soak up the salt overnight. So I would just go by taste, add a couple teaspoons for now, and then in the morning you might want to add another teaspoon. So I got this all salted and ready to go. And I'm going to actually take them out of this little ice container that I bought at Aldi's, and I'm going to store it in a plastic baggie. The same night that I made cheese, I was excited to use it, so we decided to use some of these potatoes up because they're starting to go bad, and I got them all diced up. I'm going to add some olive oil and some herbs de Provence because that's my favorite, and I'm going to get these in the oven, and I'm going to actually be making a gravy because we're going to be making that poutine and adding those squeaky cheese curds on top, and then pouring the gravy over that. It's going to be super delish. And for the side, I wanted to have a little bit of protein, so I got a couple pork chops on the frying pan, and I'm really liking these spices by Kinder's. I have cowboy butter on it, and then I'm going to use some of my chicken bone broth that I had on my shelf, my pantry shelf. I really liked stocking up on chicken bone broth. You can use this for so many things, like soups and stews. If you have, you needed to use it for a chicken pot pie or any kind of casserole, it's really, really convenient and actually very delicious. So I have a stick of butter melting in my saucepan, and this is going to be the base of the gravy. So I got just adding some flour. That's about like 1/3 to 1/4 a cup, since it's a whole stick of butter. And that's what's going to be the thickener of the gravy. And then we're going to add the chicken bone broth. I have a whole quart going in there. And of course, I'm going to add some salt and pepper and whatever spices I have on hand. I'm actually going to add some chicken bouillon spice, which is my favorite spice I use in so many of my scratch-made dishes, just to add a bit of that chicken bouillon flavor. And I actually found this huge container at Walmart for around like $5, and it lasts a really long time. It will last us for at least 2 months. So I'm going to get that warming up, and the potatoes are out. I got the gravy done, so that is nice and thick. I just warmed it up until it thickened, and that turned out super delicious. And I got my fried potatoes, kind of like bite-sized. That's how the hubs likes it. I got my pork chops all cooked up, and then we are going to assemble this poutine, and I have my cheese curds here. And I got the potatoes and the cheese curds and the gravy on top. And we got our little protein pork chop there. And this was the bee's knees. So we're very excited to be making this meal again, as well as the cheese curd. So I wanted to make a banana cream pie, and I knew it was going to be in this book that I got. So I actually got this book last year, and it is one of my favorite cookbooks. It's a Mennonite community cookbook, and it has so many amazing recipes in there. I just pre-made this so I can just pop it in the oven because it needs to be baked. And I have some bananas here. I don't think I used all of those. I used 2 bananas, but this is the recipe. I got it on a cookbook that I had since I was 20 years old. And that is a recipe for the filling. So basically it is a custard, and I added everything all together, all the ingredients together, and I'm just warming that up slowly. And it should thicken, but you want to babysit it so it doesn't burn on the bottom. And I am going to bake this crust in the oven. So I got my beans in there weighing down my crust so it doesn't puff up. So I'm just going to bake this. I baked it for 35 to 40 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I will let that chill. This custard looks like it is nice and thick, so I'm going to assemble this banana cream pie. So this was the best recipe ever, but if you try the custard before it goes in, you're going to question it. So it's kind of like what Ruth Zimmerman said. You know how when you have your lunchbox that you get ready for the kids or just for work, and you have a banana in there. So pretty much it makes everything smell like bananas. And that's how this banana cream pie is going to work. So if you taste the vanilla custard, it's going to be very vanilla-y. But once you add the bananas in there and let it sit for a couple hours, it will be the best banana cream pie you have ever had, or at least close to it. So I'm going to fill this pie. I got my bananas all lined up and the filling in there. So you're just going to chill it. And then I'm just going to probably be making a little of that whipped cream to go on top. So it doesn't call for bananas on top, but I thought it would look cute with a little decoration. They get a little brown, but it's definitely worth it for having the bananas kind of infused through the whole pie. It definitely turned out really delicious, and we'll be making this again. So I'm just going to pop that in the fridge and let it chill, and we'll come back to it after dinner. Good girls. So we're having a really light dinner, but that is okay. We're going to have some fried cheese curds, and we're going to have that banana cream pie for dessert. So that is super exciting. So all I did here was I have flour in a bowl, and I put some chicken bouillon spice in there. Then I have some eggs whipped up on the side. And then we are going to get to breading all these cheese curds. I usually go egg flour, just to make it nice and thick. And so I'm going to bread those all up, and then we're going to get them in the frying pan and frying. So I was just thinking about it next time I will have to make these into longer strips. I just wanted to try it exactly how the author had made her fried cheese curd. And so that'll be super exciting, is to try in different things and different shapes and different flavors. So you can always add a chili flake or just some garlic powder and onion powder. You can just use your imagination and pick any flavor and it'd be super delicious. So I got these frying at around 350 to 370 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm going to cook them for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. But I'm actually going to, if it takes longer, that's fine. I'm just going to let them get until they're nice and golden brown. And then I'm going to pop them on a plate with a paper towel just to strain the excess grease off. And then I have the perfect sauce for dipping these in. I was going to grab one of my pizza sauces that I had made last year. And I did notice when we tried these, they were super soft in the middle. They didn't really string, but that's okay. They're super soft and ooey gooey. And when you chewed on them, they would actually squeak. So it's actually the squeaky cheese curd that you buy at the store. It's just homemade from scratch. And now it is pie time. So I just put together a little bit of whipping cream and sugar, and I added some of my homemade vanilla extract, and I think I added a little bit too much because I had a little zing to her. But this pie was so delicious. I'll be definitely making this again in the near future. And this night's meal, I'm really digging into my pantry. So I have some hamburger that I'm browning up. I just had that in my freezer. And I'm going to need to make room. So I'm going to try to get into using up a lot of my frozen stuff in my freezer because we're going to be getting a quarter of a cow, hopefully in March. So I'm making it a cheeseburger hamburger helper. I have some cheese here, some stewed tomatoes, some collard greens that I had left over because Tom had some for lunch yesterday, and a quart of chicken bone broth. So I'm just going to be adding all that, and then towards the end I'll add these noodles that I had left over and that I needed to get used up. So I'm just assembling this meal. I got the stewed tomatoes there that I canned this year. And then I'm getting that all stirred up. And I also have some spices in there. I have some garlic powder and onion powder, some salt and pepper. And sometimes I like to add a little chicken bouillon. Even though it's hamburger, it adds that little bit of flavor that makes it really delicious. And I'm also going to be adding the greens and then my chicken bone broth. And there's that chicken bone broth again. I love having that for a pantry staple. You can make soups and stews with it and just add flavor to so many dishes. So that's what it looks like right now. I'm going to bring that to a nice boil, and then I'm going to add the noodles, and I'm also going to add the cheese. So we're going to get the cheese all melted first, of course, before I add the noodles, and then we'll get some milk in there and heavy cream, And that's going to be our cheeseburger hamburger helper. So I'm going to make that nice and thick. I don't have to add any flour or anything because that's going to thicken up really good. And then as soon as I get that to a boil, we'll add the noodles and let that cook for about 5 or 10 minutes. It depends on how you like your noodles. I like my noodles al dente, so they have just a little spring in its step, a nice little bite to them. So I think it's about done. It looks creamy and delicious. It looks like a deconstructed cheeseburger. Well, kind of. It tasted like one. It was so delicious. And with all those vegetables, and then I also had the chicken bone broth that actually made it nutritious. So that's what we had for dinner on that night. We got to use a few jars, some stuff from the freezer, and I think that made a perfect pantry meal. And most likely we'll be eating off this for a few days because that is a lot for us. But dinner is served. Usually on Sundays, I do a lot of my baking. So I bake all my bread, and then if I want to make biscuits, I make biscuits and bagels. So I get that prepped the day before, and then I can make my biscuits on the same day because it has a different leavening than the sourdough. It has baking soda as well as baking powder. So there's 3 different leavenings, and it gives it a really good sourdough taste, and it's gut healthy. So those are all the benefits of this biscuit, plus it is super delicious. You're going to want to use cold butter and then grate the butter into your mixture when doing this, and it makes your biscuits rise nicely. And for this recipe, I'll have it in the show notes down below, and I'll have the link to my blog there as well. So on this night, I decided just to make an easy dinner, and we're going to make some biscuits and gravy. So I had saved the gravy from the other night when we made poutine. I'm going to use that as the base to my gravy, and I'm going to spruce it up with some hamburger. I had that in the freezer, so I had thawed that morning, and I'm going to add the gravy that I saved from the other night, and I'm just going to add that to the mix, and I'm going to add some milk and cream, some salt and pepper, and just a few other spices, and that is going to be dinner tonight. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to take leftovers and make something new with it. So I like getting creative in the kitchen, that's for sure. So there's no need to add any flour or any thickener because I'm just going to add a few more spices and a little bit of milk. We'll get it to the perfect texture, and then we'll get it served on our biscuits. And I like to make a nice big batch like that so I can use it during the week for breakfast, or if I have to take one on the go to an appointment or before work. It's nice and filling. It has a really good flavor, and it keeps really good in the freezer for about 2 to 3 weeks, so it makes it really convenient. On this night, we're digging into the freezer, and we got a pot roast, and I'm using my best friend in the kitchen, which is the slow cooker. And I'm gonna start this early in the morning, and I'm gonna let it cook all day long, and that'll be nice and tender when we get to it at night. And then I'm gonna use some vegetables that I preserved in the freezer as well. I got some beets and carrots that I wanted to use up. I'm just seasoning up this pot roast with some pepper and a little bit of salt. And then I'm just using up spices that I already had in my cabinet. This is a honey brown sugar seasoning, and I got that at Walmart. And then I'm adding some of my frozen onions and a little bag of this pot roast seasoning mix that I got from Walmart as well. That really adds layers of flavor. If I was actually wanting to add more flavor, I would have thawed out the roast a little bit, seared all the sides, and then added it and added all those things. We've actually been really enjoying the beets and the carrots from the garden, so we're definitely making sure that each have their own bed for next year. So I'll be plotting out my next year's garden hopefully soon, and I ordered some really unique seeds. They're perennials and they come back every year. So for instance, I have some scarrots coming, and I have some Old King Henry seeds coming, as well as a few other different plants that I can't wait to share with you guys. So hopefully I'll be planting the garden and getting all my seeds together and making a plan. And this is what dinner looked like on that night. It was super delicious, and it was definitely a comfort meal. So for dessert, I decided we're gonna make a sweetbread, and I had some butternut squash pureed up in my fridge, so we're gonna use that up and make dessert with it, and we'll also have that for snacks and part of our breakfast in the morning. So this little sweetbread will last us all week long with various meals and snacks. So I ended up canning a whole bunch of butternut squash. We got 12 from the Amish food auction, and now I think we have 3 on the shelf left, plus I canned a whole bunch, and I've been cooking with it pretty often, making casseroles. I made a cottage pie. I made an actual pie, like a pumpkin pie. We actually got them for 98 cents for each one, so I thought that was a really good deal. So hopefully we'll be getting to the Amish food auction next year, because it was really exciting. I don't know if you've ever been to an auction, but it goes really fast. And sometimes you get a good deal, and sometimes the price gets hiked up there, so you just gotta be on your game. So that's it. That's all I have for you this week, friends, and I will see you on the next one.